Hello all of you out there, and in today's video I'm going to show you the top 10 Furry Ark creatures. In at number 10 is the Gacha, and you probably wouldn't say that this is a furry creature, but it does have some fur around its face and those kind of areas, so albeit it doesn't fit the category perfectly, it still does have some fur along it, so I'm obviously going to count it on the list. And albeit this isn't very useful on all other maps apart from Extinction because it doesn't spawn on that map, and snow owls may not be readily available, they're still really useful on Extinction for getting insane loot. And I know it has been nerfed, but still they are a really OP tame, and we always love, especially considering it's getting near to the Christmas season now, when Gacha Claws comes around and you can give Gacha Claws stuff and then get stuff from it, and then obviously Raptor Claws as well, every midnight dropping those presents, getting into that Christmas spirit. Next up we have the Castoroides, and this definitely does fit the bill a lot more because it is completely coated in fur essentially. I can't remember what it's called in Ark. It's got is it just fur? It might just be fur. It's some kind of day. I can't remember what resource it is. But this will drop it, and obviously that's used to make fur armor. Maybe it is called fur. I'm actually not sure. I haven't collected that resource in a while. But either way, the use for this creature is essentially like a chainsaw in Ark. This thing is an insanely great wood gatherer. And wood is a resource which you're going to need a lot of in Ark. And the fact that you can get loads of it with this creature is actually a really nice thing to have in a creature, obviously. And luckily the Castoroides does actually have this, and it really does play to a benefit, as before you get a chainsaw, this is going to be the best way that you can really gather wood. And yes, the Feathery is another great tame for gathering wood, but it's not one which is furry. That's more feathery, so this doesn't, so that creature, sorry, doesn't count on this list. Also, this thing also, I don't know why I said also so much, this has a portable smithy on its saddle, which is just a nice little neat bonus. Now, there's no lie in saying that the Deon is a very useful Ark tame, and this is an extremely useful one. And if you don't know what it is, this is mainly used for bosses because of one ability it has, which will require you to level up a lot of food into this thing, and you're going to need a lot of meat on top of that as well. Just absolutely start cramming meat into this thing. It is going to need all that meat, and essentially the reason for this is because of that healing ability which it has, and it is going to absolutely tank through that meat like there is no tomorrow. But meat isn't really a difficult resource to gather, so you should definitely be fine with gathering all of that, and it really is going to help you out, especially when you have a UT along your side as well. It is a really essential boss creature to have, in my opinion. In at number 7 we have the Manag, and this creature again isn't well known for being particularly furry, but you can look along it. It's got a furry tail, a furry face. It definitely does count, and it has to have fur on the model, obviously, to count as a furry creature. No feathery creatures are in this list, of course. And in terms of their abilities, they are one of the best travel mounts for any PvE or PvP player to use. These things are so fast and so quick, quicker than anything on Extinction really, and they're so versatile in the way that they move. You can't help but love to travel with these things, as long as you really know how to control them, as I'm not particularly great at this still, because I don't really use this creature that much, and I would definitely say it is more of a PvP oriented creature, as these things are heavily used to grief people on PvP, but not so much now, I have been told by many people over the past couple of months, so not as much now, but still they are used mainly for their freezing ability. But also watch out with this creature, as it can get stuck in all kinds of places, like it just got stuck there. And in terms of that freezing ability, here is it in action, and this thing has even been nerfed, which is crazy to think about because this ability is still really OP to this day. Next up we have the Megatherium, and this creature has to be put on this list for its insane capabilities. in boss fights, especially the Broodmother on the island. And I'm sure most Ark players will have done that boss so many times, and every time I've really done it, I've done it with Megatheriums. Maybe a few times I haven't, but Megatheriums are always the go-to. And even if you're not fighting the Broodmother with these creatures, they are still really great for doing any kind of cave runs, as caves, if you didn't know already, are full of insects, and this thing has an absolutely insane buff against insects, which is it's like a rage buff. It's something along those lines, and essentially what it does is when it eats an insect or kills an insect, it will gain this buff, and then as it kills another, that buff will obviously replenish its timer back to full. So if you're in a cave full of loads of insects, that buff isn't going to run out, and it's just going to give you an insane advantage damage wise, and I think damage reduction wise as well. Either way, you're going to do so much damage to insects and other creatures as well, as long as the buff does last. And they're actually pretty good berry gatherers as well. And in terms of what this buff looks like and how you know when it is activated, it kind of looks like the alpha buff. It is a sort of orange glow, which you will see in just a few moments here. Don't know why I spent this long looking for an insect, but there you can see, pretty much just like a slightly lighter alpha buff. In at number 5 is the UT, and the UT has a very similar use to the Deon, not because it heals up your creatures in the boss fight, but it does a different thing in the boss fight, but it's still relevant as it is a boss fighting creature. And this isn't going to be the creature which you use to deal that damage in the boss fight. No, this is the creature which is going to buff up the creatures which are doing the damage. For example, the Megatherium for the Broodmother, the Rexes for the Megapithecus, and the Theries for the dragon. If you don't know why, the Theries are the best option for the dragon on the island. Go check out one of my other top 10s when I talk about the Thery, or just look for one where the Thery's in the thumbnail, and the Thery will most certainly be in the list. But the reason why this can buff up your creatures is because of the Courage Roar, which will essentially allow your creatures to deal even more damage than they could before, and give them some damage reduction on top of that as well. And the Fear Roar can be used on any wild or enemy creatures, and it sadly does have a size limit, but still it works really well if someone's trying to raid your base in a PvP scenario on a Pteranodon. If you have one of these things, just whack out that Fear Roar and the rider won't be able to control your tame. So really nice little PvP strat if you didn't know it already. Next up we have the Mwing, and this creature is one of my favourite tames and definitely the best travel mount which you will find in Ark. Unless that map just has no elevation whatsoever, then this is going to struggle somewhat, as it kind of needs elevation to glide properly, and a Tropiognathus is really going to be your go-to there, as that is obviously going to get you around the map really fast, and Astrodelphis would be a good shout as well. But I just really like this creature, and especially the level you unlock its saddle at, level 19, which is so early on into the game compared to the Tropiognathus and the Astrodelphis. Those things saddles are unlocked way later into the game, and the taming methods aren't just the simple knockout trank. The Astrodelphis requiring element, and the Tropiognathus requiring, I think, catapults or cannons, something like that. It doesn't use tranks. I haven't tamed a Tropiognathus in a while, but either way, I know it is kind of, it's just a more kind of buff trank method. And essentially, these things will also act as a portable feeding trough, which is great as well if you're into all of that breeding. I'm not really a breeder myself, but it has come in handy a few times. And they'll also gather berries as well. You know, just get that 3-in-1 ultimate combo. In at number 3 is the Desmoi. And before you say it doesn't have fur, I've checked on its model in Blender, and it does have fur around its face, and it is called some kind of fur. It's a different layer on the model. I've checked in Blender with the file for this thing, so I can confirm that it has fur, and it kind of makes sense. Bats are mammals. You would expect them to be furry creatures, and this creature has a wealth of great abilities, namely that glide ability, which is shared from creatures like the snow owl and the griffin, but it also can make sanguine elixir, which is an absolute cheat for doing any kind of taming, as 30% of it is done for you. It can also grapple onto walls and ceilings like the Tapajara, which is a nice ability to have, but don't accidentally dismount when doing this, and I'm sure many people have accidentally pressed E or the equivalent button on consoles when trying to grapple onto a wall. They can also turn invisible as well, although that doesn't really work on extinction as the Wasteland Spine doesn't have a night cycle, and they can also farm blood bags, which no other Ark creature to this day can do. In at number 2 is the Thler, and you probably expect this creature to be on the list. This is one of the best carnivores out there, and it really is a shame that it isn't allowed into boss fights. That is one of the main advantages the Deinonychus has over this creature, but that is a feathery creature and not a furry creature. I'll probably do a list on that the day after this video comes out, so look out for it. I'll put it in the list of top 10s to do next. Also, comment down below some top 10s which you want to see in the future as well, as I'm always keen to hear your thoughts on these videos, and also what videos you want me to do in the future, because yes, it's all good me just doing the top 10s, which I feel like doing every single day. Yes, daily top 10s, if you didn't know that already. But I want to hear from you, the audience, because you're the people actually watching and supposedly enjoying these videos. I'm going to say supposedly. I don't expect everyone to like me as a person. But yes, if you're the ones enjoying these videos, if you want to just see some more out of me and more personalized stuff, you know, you can pretty easily get a top 10 recommendation in. As you know, I'm not the biggest channel, which I'm kind of a fan of, because I get to respond to all of your comments and I really like hearing all your thoughts on the videos. Either way, back to the Thler. This thing is an insanely useful creature, namely for its travel, which most other carnivores really do lack in, and it has the ability to climb up walls, vertical surfaces, trees, and pounce off of those trees, and it can jump really high too. But on top of that, it has the bleed ability, which loads of carnivores lack. I shouldn't just say the Carno, because the Carno does have the bleed ability. But yes, it kind of doesn't make sense why all carnivores don't have this, as they are like literally slicing tames up. But you know, the bleed ability is an absolute OP one, which is great to work on bosses with only the Deinonychus, as that's the only creature which can go into bosses and deal the bleed damage. But you know, it's still nice that it has it. Also, before we get into number 1, just as a quick honourable mention, I have to talk about the mammoth briefly, and the only reason why I didn't put it on this list is I really don't use it as a creature and I don't need it, but it still is extremely worth talking about. And finally, in at number 1 is the Megalosaurus. And this creature is, in my opinion, the best furry dinosaur, and it does have fur running all along its spine, so I am going to count it on this list. And if you don't know the Megalosaurus already, this is pretty much one of the best, if not the best small carnivore out there, especially on Arboration. And people may be saying, why put this thing in at number 1 when it can only really be used at night? Well, the thing is, this is just such an OP creature. I have to put it in at number 1. And if you absolutely loathe this thing, then just pretend I put the Thler or the Desmoi in at number 1. But I just absolutely love this creature, and with its wealth of abilities like this one here, when it can take small creatures and just absolutely chomp on them, you really can't discount this creature, as there is no other Ark dino like it, but there are some creatures which can do the same sort of job as the Thler. I'm talking about the Deinonychus there, whereas there isn't any creature which can really replace this one. You could say the Allo or the Carno, but they don't have all of the benefits of ability that this thing has, and the size, speed, and agility which this thing has, which most people forget as well, as the smaller the carnivore, usually the more agile it is. And yes, it isn't as agile as something like the Baryonyx. It still really does pack more of a punch over Baryonyx, and it is a really good caving creature as well, especially on Arboration, and it is probably the go-to creature for obviously obtaining your first Rock Drake on Arboration, if that is something which you haven't done already. So that is my opinion on the Megalosaurus, but what do you think of this creature? But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this one, as I really did enjoy making it. And comment down below, what is your favourite Furry Ark tame, and I will see you all later.